Hi everybody, Lori here for Simon Says Stamp. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a fun project to share with you using some new products from the latest Smitten release by Simon Says Stamp. So I'm going to be starting with a few products here. First up is the CZ Love Ya Hot Foil Plate, and then we have the CZ Noted Heart Stamp Set with the coordinating Noted Heart die set, and then we have the Hearty Tweed Stencil. I'm going to start with the Hearty Tweed Stencil. I'm going to do a little rainbow ink blending. So I have my full-size Misty here, and I'm going to pull out the Simon Says Stamp and Stencil mat, and it fits perfectly in the Misty, and it kind of holds your panel down, and it holds your stencil down, so you don't need to use any tape. Okay, so once I get this all positioned, I'm just using white cardstock. I believe I'm using Hammermill, but any white cardstock will do. And of course, I'll be using all Pawsitively saturated inks, starting with Peony, one of my favorite colors. I'm also using the Simon Says Stamp blender brushes. And when I ink up, a lot of times I like to tap off onto some scratch paper, just in case I get a little excess ink on there, so you don't come in hot, guns a-blazing, and you can get a lot of splotchy. But I will tell you, when you're using a stencil, especially like this one with the Hearty Tweed, it's very forgiving. Okay, so I went from Peony to Blush into Sherbet. Now I'm into Sunbeam, and it's very forgiving, but I am trying to get a nice seamless blend in between the colors. So you just got to overlap a little. Got to make sure that Limalicious goes a little bit into the Sunbeam, so you get that limey green color. Here we have Marine, which is a very light blue, but it's coming out quite a bit darker, and that's because my blender brush had some darker blue ink on it. Sometimes you just never know what you're going to get when you use a blender brush. You know what I'm saying? When you got these blender brushes that are well loved, you never know what color is going to come out. Okay, finishing it off with Orchid, getting a nice overlap with that Orchid and the Peony. Now, this looks great as is, but I wanted to kind of make it a little more subtle. So I'm going over the blended parts with the same colors that I blended. So here I have Orchid, since I had it out, and I blended over that Orchid portion, working my way through the Simon Says rainbow. Here we have Peony, a little bit of that over the Peony, and this just kind of makes it less stark. Debatable, you know, sometimes you can make it stark, sometimes you want it to be a little more dreamy, and I was feeling the dreamy vibe today. So here we have Sherbet. And if you have enough ink left over on your sponge, you don't even have to re-ink it, because this is just a very, very, very light wash. And I am, again, trying to get a nice smooth transition between the colors, so therefore I'm overlapping just a little bit. Here we have Limalicious, and that's one of my favorites. When Limalicious overlaps with the yellow, you get that beautiful lime green, which is just the cat's meow. Rounding it out with that blue. Now, I already knew. I learned my lesson. The ink blender brush is already nice and juicy, so you don't need much on it. Now, here's one thing I usually do. I always like to go over the red part. I don't know what it is, but I always want to amp up that red. I feel like when you amp up the red, you amp up the joy, really is what you do. So I laid that Tweedy Heart, or Hearty Tweed. I laid it back over, gave it a once over with the blush, and that made me happy. Now, here's a little white pigment ink. And I haven't done this in a while. I actually had to buy a new bottle of that little acrylic opaque white pigment ink. There's a lot of different white inks out there that you can flick with. This is a good one. But here's the thing about flicking. Be prepared to get it everywhere. I got it all over my ink pads, all over my grid mat, but it was worth it. It was worth it. Now, for the Noted Heart, I want to do that big Noted Heart image. I'm going to emboss it in white on a little panel of VELLUM. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. I first rubbed it down with that powder tool, inking up the image with Versamark ink. Going to stamp it. This time I'm using the Mini Misty, and then I will pour on Simon Says Stamp white embossing powder. One thing that I never show in my videos, but when I'm about at this part of the embossing procedure, I have already turned on my heat gun. I like to get that thing piping hot. When it's piping hot, it goes really quick. You get the least amount of warpage. I'm using the coordinating Noted Heart die, holding it down with a little Easy C pink tape, taking it off camera, running it through my die cutting machine, cuts it like butter. I love this nice vellum heart because it's going to allow to see through, you know, so you don't cover up that background. Now for the Love Ya hot foil plate, I've got my Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil machine ready to go. Using some Spellbinders gold foil and some Simon Says Stamp white glossy cardstock. And then you got to let that thing sit. Hit the timer and be patient. Actually, I like to go even longer than the timer. I feel like I get better results when I let that sit for a while and marinate. Not that it's marinating, but you get the idea. Okay, I ran it through my die cut machine and it foiled like butter. Now, I happen to have the old CZ Love Ya word die, and that shadow backer perfectly fits with the foiled sentiment. So that was just, I love it when that happens, you know. Again, some of that Easy See pink tape. Take it off camera, run it through my die cutting machine. You have a perfectly foiled and die cut sentiment. I have trimmed down my blended and flicked up to the high heavens panel here. I'm putting a little tape runner on the back and adhering this flat onto a white card base, trying to make it center. Do you guys ever have trouble centering things? I do. I think I have it centered and I glue it down and I come back later and it's not even close to being straight. It's very crooked and it makes me question myself. Laura, what's wrong with your eyes? What is wrong? So sometimes you just need to slow down, take your time, and center the panel. You know, okay, I put some of those 3D foam squares on the back of my foiled sentiment, but I didn't use any adhesive on the vellum. With vellum, you got to be very strategic. So I put a little glue behind the die cut to hold it down, and I'm using some of these new Be Mine sequins or embellishment mix. These also just came out in the Smitten release. I love the bright bubblegum pink and cheery yellow colors. I like that you get the 3 different sizes here, and I'm just kind of, you know, scattering them around the sentiment, using some Bearly Arts glue to glue them down with my embellishment wand. And this card is finished. It's very simple, but it's got the pop of color. I love that vellum white embossed noted heart behind, kind of cocked on an angle to keep it fresh. And there you have a fun card. This would be great for Valentine's season, but also good for any time of the year when you just want to tell someone, hey, if you hadn't forgot, or if you had forgot, just want to let you know, I love you. And by the way, all the supplies that I used in this video will be listed in the description box if you're watching on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at SimonsSaysStamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.